Okay, there we go. All right. This is meant to be a pretty, for those of you, I know I see a lot of familiar faces, and you know the way that I operate is that it's pretty low key. It's a conversation. I am going to use a deck today, which is actually not my favorite way to do it. I'd rather just have a face-to-face conversation. But I'm going to use a deck today, and I will be sharing that with you afterwards so that you don't need to like go crazy trying to take notes. And there will also be a recording.
That's good.
So that's pretty bold of me to even assume you'd want to take notes, but if you want to, don't worry about it because I will be sending you this stuff. All right, so I am, let's see. Hey, Annie, are you at a computer? Annie Jacobson?
Am I what? At a
Are
computer?
you at a computer?
I am. Is that a problem?
No, not a problem at all. If I made you a co-host, would you possibly manage the participant admissions for me?
Yes, certainly. Just letting people in. There we go.
That'd be
Yeah.
great. Okay, cool.
I will
Thank
let
you.
people in as they come in.
Thank you. I really appreciate that because I'm about to load my deck and it'll be hard for me to do that. All right, cool. So Annie's on top of that. And without further ado, then I'm going to go ahead. I see you got that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Alrighty. So anyway, Allison Schreier, very, very happy to be here with all of you today. And just a few little housekeeping things. So as I said, for those who are just arriving, I am going to be recording this. The recording will be made available to you as well as the speaker notes, which I will send out in an email. I'm expecting the conversation today to go about 45 to 50 minutes of me kind of delivering stuff. Might be a little bit shorter. If you have questions and it's really pressing and you're afraid that you're not going to remember it, by all means, just kind of cut in and say, hey, wait, I have a question. Otherwise, if you want to put your questions into the chat, we'll just sort of start rolling through those at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get this show on the road. Okay, and if I slideshow, if I play from the start and crush this. Okay, if somebody, Gail, could you give me a heads up? Do you see, let's see.
All of a sudden, I have post attendee Zoom.
Post attendee Zoom. Hang on a second. Continue to share, continue to share. Now do you see the window?
Oh, yes.
Okay, cool. So you guys should all see a big orange screen that says Zinnia, responding to dementia-related changes in the person that you support. And that's what we're here for today, is to talk about those things. So let me go ahead here and we're going to get going. So the learning objectives for today. The brain of a person who's living with dementia is changing. We'll talk more about that. Those changes in the brain, physical changes, impact the way that a person perceives the world. The way that they perceive the world changes the way that they respond to the world. And so our job as caregivers is to understand what those changes are and how do we respond in a way that is dignified and non-shaming and that reduces anxiety for everybody involved. So that's really the purpose of today's conversation, is understanding how to respond effectively to the changes that are happening in the person that we support. A big part of that is staying in their reality. We'll talk a lot more about that. And it's always important to talk about ourselves as well as the person that we're supporting. Yeah, we're taking care of somebody, but we also need to take care of ourselves. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. I popped this in here. You don't write all of this down. As previously mentioned, I'm going to be sending the deck. One of the best things that One of the best things you can do to take care of yourselves as a care partner is to get educated. So yes, you're here today, and that's a big part of it, right? You're trying to learn things. You're trying to figure all of this out. I just tossed a slide in here that has some of my favorite resources on it. We don't need to go into detail about it. You will be receiving this in email. And these are just my list changes all the time. As I meet new people, I discover new resources. I'm always shouting from the rafters about the places that I wish I had known about, the things that I wish existed when I was a caregiver. So here's where my story starts. So these are my people. My sons, Ari and Eli, were young teenagers at the time that my husband was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia. And here we are a year into his diagnosis. And let me just move that. Okay, so here we are a year into his diagnosis, and this was the catalyst for everything that I do now. So I wound up becoming an educator. I studied with Teepa Snow for a while, love her, still always send people to her site and to her videos. I wound up getting certified in Washington State to teach the classes that are mandated for people who work in long-term care. So for 4 years, I was in long-term care communities teaching dementia and mental health classes to those boots on the ground people. I also taught families how to better support the people that they are caring for at home. And I joined the University of Washington, where for 3 years I helped launch and then managed a program that is all about education, but in this case, the people being educated are doctors to help them detect, diagnose, and support people who are living with dementia. And so it's all of that background that I bring here today. But the most relevant background that I have is the same background that you have, which is that I was caring for somebody who's living with dementia. And so I learned by doing a lot of things wrong, occasionally doing things right, and being able to tell the difference between the two. In addition to my husband having frontotemporal dementia, my stepdad, right around the same time, was diagnosed with vascular dementia, and my stepmom had Alzheimer's disease. So suddenly I was trying to figure a lot of things out. Just to get us all on the same page, make sure that we're all talking about the same stuff. So, what is dementia? Probably most of you in the room are already aware of the fact that there actually is no diagnosis called dementia. Although I often hear people say that my loved one has a diagnosis of dementia. They have dementia, which is of which there are many, many different types of diseases that qualify for that label. So while there's not a disease called dementia, dementia is the description that houses lots of different diseases that have similar types of symptoms and characteristics. The most prevalent being Alzheimer's disease. 50 to 75% of people who have a dementia have Alzheimer's disease. Vascular dementia, Lewy body, and frontotemporal dementia are also pretty prevalent, but less so than Alzheimer's disease. Of course, it's also very common for people to have a mixed dementia. So they have Alzheimer's disease and they have something else. The thing that all of these diseases have in common is that while they impact different parts of the brain, so the dementia that I have defines what parts of the brain are impacted by it, the thing that they all have in common is that they cause neurons and the pathways between neurons to die. The brain loses mass, and in fact, the brain of a person who has died from dementia can be up to a third smaller than the brain of a person who didn't have dementia. Another thing that all of these diseases have in common is that they are chronic, they are progressive, and as of right now, we don't have a cure for them. So I'm not going to spend any time on this slide. All I'm going to tell you is that this is the list of things that we're about to talk about. What are the brain changes that happen as a result of these diseases, and what do we do about it? The first thing that seems to impact so many of the ways that a person experiences the world with dementia is that processing speed is diminished. So let's talk about that for a moment. Our brains are computers, and they are computers that take data in and that spit data out. So data in is what we take in primarily through our senses, but can also be through our internal systems. But the things that I take in auditorially and visually and through my sense of touch and taste and smell. And my brain then does something with that information. And then perhaps there's going to be some kind of response for me that would be the data out. So a very simple example of this would be that I, with my healthy brain, ask you with your healthy brain, hey, what would you like for lunch today? And you say, I would like a turkey sandwich. Okay, so the data in was my question. Your brain then took that question, what would you like for lunch today, and it flew information. There was stuff flying around all over inside of your brain, electrical impulses going to neurons, traveling down neuronal pathways, and almost instantly you came out with the answer, I would like a turkey sandwich. So we just established previously that when a person is living with one of those diseases that is a dementia, we talked about the fact that their brain loses neurons. It loses neuronal pathways. It actually loses mass. So now when I give you data in, what would you like for lunch today? Those electrons start flying around, right? Information is flying around inside the brain, and a neuron tries to talk to another neuron, but oh no, the bridge is out because the pathway between them has died. So the brain wants to answer. So it keeps rerouting. It's going to keep changing its path and trying to figure out how to get to where it needs to go to be able to formulate the data out, which is the response. So for a person who's living with dementia, this rerouting results in a diminished processing speed. So answers come out more slowly, and it takes longer for the person to understand the input that they have just received. So the way that this affects a person who's living with dementia is on their ability to follow a conversation. So it's estimated that a person who's living with dementia, even very early on, is probably missing one in every 3 or 4 words that are being spoken. So here I am living with dementia. I'm listening, I'm processing the first word, the second word, the third word. The fourth word pops out, but I'm still on the third word. The fifth word pops out, but I'm still on the third word. Now the sixth word comes out and I've lost track of the conversation. Similarly, it's very difficult for the person to process and provide the response. So that my reaction to, so when I am asked the question, what would you like for lunch? It might take me up to 20 seconds to answer that question. The problem that many caregivers have is that they assume that it's because the person either didn't understand them or that their hearing is the problem, when really it's just that it takes them longer time to be able to provide that response. These changes have a huge impact, which we're going to be talking about throughout this conversation. One of them is on socialization. So one of the things that I noticed early on, long before my husband had a diagnosis, is that when we went into social situations, he started distancing himself, especially if the conversations went beyond pleasantries and transactional stuff. If it started getting into anything that was meaty or meaningful, or for instance, if there were people who were from his work who were there and they were talking about work stuff, it just became way too complicated. He was getting lost in the conversation. And so the way that he would deal with that is that he would step away, spend a lot of time just sitting on his phone, go over and start looking at the books on the bookshelf. He felt like less than. I run into so many people who say, my partner doesn't want to go out to lunch with a group of people because she says they make her feel stupid. So one of the things that we do is we try to create social success. More on that in just a moment. Okay. So what do? Well, one of the things that we do to be able to support the person who we are caring for is that we slow things down. We use fewer words. We use smaller sentences. We really up our game in terms of patience. Regular TV might be very difficult for a person. And I put this in here at this spot because it has to do with this idea of data coming in. I'm going to just share with you a brief story. So recently I attended the Michigan Assisted Living Association's conference, where I was asked to deliver, or I was asked to facilitate a panel. And the panel discussion was low tech and no tech solutions for people who are living with dementia. And one of the things that I started out with is I asked the panelists, tell me what you like to watch on TV these days. The panelists were all people who are living with dementia. Now, obviously, if they were able to get themselves to Michigan and they're able to attend a conference and be on a panel, they are people who are still have quite a bit of cognitive capacity. So when I asked the question, what do you like to watch on TV these days? All but one of them had the same response, which was, no, I don't watch TV anymore. I find that it's just too much going on. There's like they're talking so fast and the scenes are flying by, and I find that I can't keep track of the plot, and I can't follow the characters, and I wind up irritating my partner because I keep saying, wait a minute, is she the one who just wait, but who's he? So if I walk into a room and there's a TV on, I turn it off or I leave the room. So if we think about this, this is all about this process. A lot of it is about the processing speed piece. They have audio and visual information coming in at the same time, and it's really, really difficult to process both of those things. Teepa Snow has something that she says about something to keep in mind when we're supporting people with dementia, which is visual, verbal, touch. If I am about to brush your hair or help you brush your hair, I don't start brushing your hair and say, hey, let's go ahead and start brushing your hair. I'm giving you way too much information. I start with visual, which is that I show you the hairbrush. Then I add verbal. I am not making the two compete. I start with visual, then I add verbal. Let's brush our hair. Then, with your permission, I brush your hair or we start brushing your hair together, because we're being respectful of the fact that taking in visual information and auditory information at the same time is hard. For people who are living with an amnesic form of dementia, like Alzheimer's disease, right? One that has memory issues, there's also that problem of keeping track of the plot and keeping track of the characters. This processing speed issue can also result in mealtime chaos, a feeling of chaos. So one of the things that was so amazing at this conference was that they played videos of interviews with people who are living with dementia, and one of them talking about their life experiences, and one of them was a woman who talked about what it is like to eat a meal now that she has dementia. And she said, so here's a story. I'm sitting at the table. My dad is visiting. He's sitting across from me. And as I go to pick up my fork to start eating, he says, so tell me, how are things going? And she said, well, I need to have all my energy focused either on eating or on talking. I cannot do both. So I put the fork down and I tell him how things are going. And he says, okay. And she said, then I pick up my fork and he says, and how are the kids? She said, so I put my fork down and I tell him how the kids are doing. And then at some point he comments on the fact that I'm not eating. And I'm not, because I cannot do both of those things at the same time. She said, when it's mealtime for me, I set up a placemat and I put on that placemat all of the things that matter for me to have my meal: my plate, my fork, my cup, my salt and pepper shaker. If there's clutter on the table, like magazines or other people's dishes are scattered about, or big bowls in the center of the table, she said it completely throws me off. Another thing one of the people talked about, which I found just so compelling, is they said, you know what? When you get up in the morning and you throw your legs over the side of the bed and you put your slippers on and you get up and you go in and use the toilet and then you brush your teeth and then you go downstairs, that was all done without thought. They said, for me, when I get up in the morning, I sit up in bed and I think, okay, what's the first thing I need to do? The first thing I need to do, I need to put my slippers on so I can get out of bed. Okay, I'm out of bed. What's the next thing I need to do? I need to go in and use the toilet. Don't forget to wipe. I need to flush. They said by the end of the day, I am absolutely exhausted because it is so much energy to just think. And so as caregivers, we need to be just so respectful of the fact that because this processing speed is so damaged by dementia, it is difficult just getting through a day for a person who's living with dementia. And so that means that we don't try to rush people, we don't push them, we don't complain about the fact that they are slow. We respect the fact that they need more time and more support. We really want to avoid overstimulation. Costco may not be the best place for you to go spend a little bit of time because there is just so much stuff coming in. I went to a store in Victoria last year. I went with my sister. It was a shoe store. And we showed up at like 10 o'clock in the morning, and the place was somewhat dark and it was very, very quiet. And the salespeople were just standing behind the counter the whole time. Nobody came up to us and said, "Hi, what do you need today?" I commented on it and I said, "It feels so peaceful in here." And they said, "Yes, every day from 9 until 11, from the time that we open until 11 a.m., are our quiet hours to be respectful of people who need to avoid overstimulation." Wow. I was really impressed by that. We want to create opportunities for social success, so maybe we don't do big dinner parties, you guys. Maybe what we do is we just have another couple over, people who we all know well and feel comfortable with. Maybe I brief those people a little bit about where we are right now in the state of being. Maybe we all wear name tags so that nobody needs to guess and wonder who those people are. Maybe we make sure that we have food that is easy for everybody to eat. Maybe we have little topic cards on the table, and they're things that I know the person who I support still likes to talk about and still is able to talk about so that they can actually participate in the conversation. And once again, patience. All right, we just talked about processing issues, processing speed. And by the way, that processing speed thing, that affects our physicality as well. So you can imagine that if I have my big fat healthy brain and I'm walking along and I trip on a crack on the sidewalk, my brain says right leg forward fast, and I'm able to do it and I stop myself from falling. For a person who's living with dementia, the brain is still chewing on it, trying to figure out how do I get that information to move the right foot forward, but I'm already on the ground. Memory challenges. So we talked about the fact that dementia is an umbrella term and that there are many, many, many different forms of dementia and that not all of them have memory challenges. I know that we classically think of dementia being a memory thing, only if it's an amnesic form of the disease, like Alzheimer's disease. My husband's form of dementia, frontotemporal dementia, did not have any memory issues associated with it. People often use this bookcase analogy to talk about Alzheimer's disease and other amnesic types of dementia. The idea being that the books that are located closest to the top are the ones that are the short-term memories, right? And the books that are at the bottom shelf are the long-term memories. And if something happens to shake that bookcase, the ones that fly off first are the ones that are at the top. So people do lose their short-term memory first. We want to make sure that we don't set people up for failure by asking them questions that they are unable to respond to. I cannot tell you how many times I have been in long-term care communities and I see the daughter who approaches the mom and she leans in with sort of like a pained look on her face and she says, "Mom, which one am I? Which one am I, Mom? Do you remember me?" Or even people who just casually say, "Hey, Jim, do you remember me?" Wow, he probably doesn't. So let's not ask that question. Instead, we say, "Hey, Mom, Allison, it's so good to see you again." The fact that I've said, "Hey, Mom," establishes that I'm your child and I tell you which one I am. And things like who used to drive me nuts when I was with my mom and my sweet stepdad who had vascular dementia, which does have an amnesic form. And she would constantly say, "Kenny, Kenny, Kenny, where are the car keys? Don't you remember where you put them?" No, he doesn't remember where he put them. He has dementia. I think it's also worth mentioning that for a person who's living with these sort of memory challenges, it can vary day to day. It might be that today I remember everything that's involved in doing the laundry, but tomorrow I can't remember any of the steps. And I've seen cases where people say, "Oh, she remembers. I saw her do it yesterday." Well, you know what? Yesterday she remembered, and today she doesn't. And we need to be okay with the fact that people with dementia are not only changing long term, they're also varying day to day. People with these memory challenges might be inclined to start repeating themselves. They might repeat stories, they might repeat questions. So, how do we cope with that? Pardon me. With the repetition of stories, My grandmother did not have dementia, but she was somebody who repeated the same stories over and over again. And I think it's just because she didn't have a lot of stories. And my way of dealing with it as a teenager is I would say, oh my God, stop. I've already heard that story. Obviously, that's a pretty hurtful thing for a person to hear. So instead, what I might do is I might say, I just had this conversation again with my mom because there's somebody in her community who tells the same story every day. She always tells the story about the time that she moved in here and there was this guy. And I said, so mom, when she starts telling that story, I wonder what would happen if you said, you know what? I'd love to hear a little bit more about that guy. Tell me more about that guy. Like, give her opportunities to branch and open up the story a little bit. It would make it more interesting for both of you instead of just getting fed up when it happens. I want to avoid pointing out to somebody that they have told me the same thing again and again and again. And I ask you to please just consider for a moment. If I said, could everybody please just go ahead and raise your hand if there's a story that you'd like to share about your favorite dog? And let's just say that Janet raised her hand and she said, I would like to share a story about my favorite dog. I have this dog and his name is Foster. And if I were to say, Janet, for crying out loud, I want somebody else to respond. That's the 7th time you've told us that story. To Janet, it feels like the first time she's told that story. She has absolutely no recollection of having told that story a number of times previously. And so when I yell at her and I point out that she's done this thing, first of all, I'm shaming her. But secondly, I am causing her to need to make a decision. Is there something wrong with her brain or am I gaslighting her? So it creates this situation where there's mistrust. So I want to absolutely not create that kind of disruption in our relationship. If somebody is asking the same questions over and over again, I want to get curious, first of all, about why are they asking that question? So if it is somebody who I'm working at my desk, I've got my kids at home, my mom came to live with us now, I'm trying to manage everything, and there I am, I'm barely staying on top of it, and my mom comes in and she says, what time is dinner? And I say, dinner's gonna be at 6, Mom. And Mom leaves the room, comes in several minutes later and says, I'm just thinking that maybe it would be good if I knew what time dinner is. What time's dinner? Dinner's at 6, Mom. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Eventually, I'm probably going to lose it. I'm probably going to say, oh my God, for crying out loud, stop asking that question. Well, now I've done the same thing that I just did in the story that I was relating about when somebody is repeating a story over and over again. I'm causing her to feel a lot of agitation. I don't think I asked that question 6 times. I don't. Wouldn't I remember? If I'd asked that question 6 times, I think you're lying to me. Or I think there's something very wrong with my brain and now I'm terrified. So instead, I get curious. Why is she asking that question over and over again? Is it because she's hungry? Is it because this is the time of day when all my life she was the one who was making dinner, not me? And so maybe she's starting to get concerned. I should actually be cooking dinner right now. So I can say, Mom, I'm curious why you're asking. See what she says. Is it time to maybe give her a little snack? Is it time to set her up with a chore that is leading towards the completion of dinner being produced? I might also, if the same question is asked over and over again, do something like set up a whiteboard where I have the question and the answer, and I can just tell her to take a peek at the whiteboard. Just check the whiteboard, Mom. Check the whiteboard, Mom. Responding to things forgotten. Okay, like a doctor visit. So I call you up and I say, hey, don't forget, to a person with dementia, don't forget, I'm going to be picking you up on Tuesday at 10 to go to the doctor, okay? Monday, I call and I say, don't forget, I'm going to be coming by at 10 to pick you up to go to the doctor, okay? Yep, I'll be there. Okay, cool. Tuesday morning at 9, I say, hey, I'm on my way. We're going to be going to the doctor. And I show up and you're sitting in your pajamas drinking a cup of coffee because you have not hung on at all to that information. Well, it's up to me, the person whose brain is working, to recognize that you aren't able to hang on to information. And so rather than me saying, what on here? I called you Sunday. I called you to Monday. I called you this morning. We were on the phone an hour ago. Instead, what I need to do is just say, I am so sorry. I thought I called you, but you know how I am. So tell you what, why don't we just go ahead and figure out what you'd like to wear and we'll head out to the doctor. And you guys, I'm not saying this is easy. It's not easy. You're frustrated, you're angry, but we need to get ourselves into a mindset where we know that these situations are going to arise and we preempt. We're prepared for the fact that she's probably not going to remember. A question that I get all the time is, when should I tell somebody that we're going to be doing something that might be either super exciting for them and so they're getting more and more amped up, or something they don't want to do, like going to the dentist? Shouldn't I tell my mom a week ahead of time so that she has time to prepare, so she can get ready? Because she hates the dentist. I want her to just like be able to just kind of get comfortable with it. She's not going to get comfortable with it. And so what I recommend to people is, if you're going to be going to the dentist on Friday morning and you know that if you tell your mom on Monday that she's going to perseverate and she's going to keep thinking about it and worrying about it, maybe the thing to do is on Friday, if there's something she loves, like going out for a cup of coffee, we go out for a cup of coffee. And after the cup of coffee, I say, okay, so let's go to the dentist now. I didn't know we were going to the dentist. When did you make this dental appointment? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner. I'm sorry. But you know what? We're going to go there. And then afterwards, we're going to go and I have something else planned that's going to be, I'm going to bookend that appointment with things that I know will be enjoyable. And then the last little note that I have there, I did not eat breakfast yet. This is something that I know a lot of people run into, is that the person who you're supporting comes into the kitchen at 11 o'clock, says, I'm ready to eat breakfast. They ate breakfast at 8. We don't want to give them breakfast again because we're worried about their weight, we're worried about their health. But if I say, you already ate breakfast, what's going to happen? Now, it may be that they say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot. Thank you. I'm glad that you're on top of it and you're taking care of me. It may also be that they say, I did not eat breakfast. Are you saying there's something wrong with my brain? I would know if I had eaten breakfast, and I have not eaten breakfast. You know your person. You know what the response is going to be, and you can then handle the situation accordingly. If they are likely to be a person who gets upset when you point out that they've already had breakfast, then maybe what we need to do is either give them something small. Hey, why don't we just start with this little fruit salad and then we can move on to more? Or maybe what we do is we say, you know what, I was just brewing the coffee. So tell you what, let me set you up with a cup of coffee. And then maybe what we do is we sit down together with our coffee and we start having a conversation and we shift gears away from the question about breakfast. And again, we ask ourselves, why are they asking us this? Is it because they're actually hungry? Is it because they're bored? And that will play into our response. Another thing that can happen for people who are living with dementia is impaired wayfinding. So this is typical, more typical, I would say, with Alzheimer's disease than with some other dementias, because the part of the brain that manages the way that we find our way around is damaged by Alzheimer's disease. So 6 out of 10 people are going to wander at some point. And I know that when I was supporting my husband and I was in a support group, one of the conversations that came up all the time was, when do we do something about it? When do we, and what do we do about it? I highly recommend that early on you have some kind of jewelry made, something that allows a person who finds the person that you support to be able to recognize that there's something going on. So, little story here. When my husband had frontotemporal dementia, as mentioned, that does not include wandering. However, he was very, very unhappy about being stuck in the care community. He started out in assisted living, and assisted living people are still able to leave the community at whenever they want to. And I had an agreement with them that I know that crazy things could happen, but if we try to keep him locked up, it's just not going to work. So he was allowed to wander. All right. Our routine was that I would show up in the morning. I would have coffee with him. I would have my bicycle on the back of my car. I'd ride my bicycle to work. Then I would ride my bicycle back in the evening. We would have some kind of a little snack together, and then I would go home and be mom. One day I was riding my bike back, and my husband, who's allowed to be out and wandering around, was out wandering around. And I was riding my bike down the road, and I look across the street. There's a police car there. There are two police officers. There's my husband. He's kind of backed up against a wall. These guys are screaming at him. He's screaming at them. And I threw my bike on the ground. I ran across the street and I said, no, don't. And they said, lady, who is this guy? And I said, he's my husband. And I said, he has dementia. Everything would have been so much better if he had been wearing something that was easy for them to identify, so that they knew that he was a person who required some kind of, I don't know, more focused treatment, right? That they needed to have awareness about the fact that he wasn't operating as a typical person might operate. I immediately went out and got him a bracelet. And if he were to push back, I was prepared to get one for me too. Let's both get these bracelets, because that way, if anything ever happens to us, my gosh, wouldn't you want people to know who I am? And I want that for you too, because I love you. So let's get these bracelets that we wear. There are two programs that I want you to be aware of. One is run through the Alzheimer's Association called Medic Alert and their Safe Return program. The other is run through the Dementia Society of America and is called Operation Keep Safe. They're equivalent. They will send you the jewelry that identifies who the person is, and if the person goes missing, you call a special number, and wherever you are in the country, they will alert the people in wherever you are that your person has gone missing. And they have all the data about who your person is and what's going on with them. They have photographs. So it's a way to make sure that there is just one number that you can call to get the ball rolling to find your person if they go missing. Experts say that the first thing you should do if you find that your person is not around is notify family members and friends. If a person has left on foot and you don't know which way they would have gone, they are more likely to keep turning at intersections. They'll go the direction that corresponds with their dominant hand. So if you're just walking, that's just one thing to think about. Of course, this wayfinding piece does get worse, and it can reach a point where the person cannot find their way within your home. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Oh, by the way, I don't know if all of you are aware, but we also do this superhero support series where once a month I am joined by somebody to talk about a specific topic. Next week, we're going to be joined with, I'm going to be on a call with Kevin Jameson, who is the executive director of Dementia Society of America, and he's going to be speaking about that program. He's also going to be speaking about how you make your home dementia safe. And hopefully and I'll include that information in the email that I send out in case anybody wants to attend. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about that can happen as a result of dementia is hallucinations. The first thing we need to figure out is it a hallucination or a misperception? And let me explain what I mean by the two of those. There is a support group that I facilitate that's a small group of people who are local to me. One of the women one day said, "Oh my gosh, my husband accused me last night of having an affair. He said, I see you with the guy. I see you doing things with him, and I'm telling you, I don't like it." And the rest of us on the call were like, "Are you having an affair?" "No, of course I'm not having an affair." "All right, then he sees you with the guy?" So we all decided that it must be hallucinations. Yep, those are hallucinations. He's seeing you with the guy. A couple of days later, or actually the next session when we were chatting together, she said, "Well, it happened again. This time we were hanging out in the living room in the evening, as we always do. And he said, 'Why do you keep inviting so many people? I like it to just be us in the evening. And you keep bringing all of these people in. Make them leave.'" And so again, we nodded our heads like, we get this. Oh man, he's having hallucinations. A few sessions later, She said, well, something very strange has happened. I've noticed that every time my husband goes to use the bathroom, he turns off the light. And if he's going into the bathroom and the light is on, he'll shut it off before he enters the bathroom. What's going on? She said, so I asked him, why do you keep turning off the light? Why do you like to pee in the dark? And he said, because I don't like that old man watching me. And that was the aha moment when we realized, like, oh, the old man is him. He sees himself in the mirror. He sees her doing things with him. She brushes his teeth. She brushes his hair. She shaves him. The living room was because the curtains were open and it was reflections of the two of them on all of the windows. So that is not a hallucination. That's a misperception. So the first thing we need to ask ourselves is, which is it? And then we respond accordingly. We keep the curtains closed. We take the mirror off the wall, or we hang something on the mirror. Is it a problem? The reason that I picked this picture of the little bunnies is because for people who are living with Lewy body dementia, first of all, that is the dementia of all of them that is most likely to have a hallucination component. It's not at all uncommon, especially early in the disease trajectory, that people see things. And they typically see little animals and little people. They are typically non-threatening. I did a lecture in the Seattle area recently. A friend of mine attended the lecture, and afterwards she said, oh my God, Allison, I think my mom might be a person who has Lewy body dementia. She said, because gosh, a few months ago, she started talking about the bunny rabbits that she sees. She said she sees bunny rabbits hopping all over the apartment. And so the question is it a problem? Her mother loves the bunnies. She thinks they're cute. And so Jen just doesn't get worried about it. And by the way, her mom thinks that it's because she eats too much black licorice. And that's making her see bunny rabbits. So stay away from black licorice. What could cause hallucinations? Well, it could be the brain changes, right? From Lewy body dementia, those brain changes could be causing the hallucinations. It could be infections, medications not playing well together, dehydration, high stress, lack of sleep. Talk to your doctor, especially if the changes are sudden. So if there is a urinary tract infection, for instance, people could slip into delirium. Delirium looks a lot like dementia, except it happens overnight, right? We know that dementia is a marathon. We know that the stuff that is eventually going to cause symptoms takes place over a period of 20 years. And then eventually I become symptomatic. And then once a person is symptomatic, they can go on for years. I know people, my husband lived for 7 years after his diagnosis. He was diagnosed fairly late in the game, actually, but I know people who were diagnosed 16 years ago and are still doing quite well. Delirium is bam. Within a couple of days, suddenly it seems like a game of chutes and ladders, and someone has jumped into a slide and just gone down the dementia path very, very quickly. If that happens, you need to talk to a doctor. Hallucinations are typically visual. They can be auditory or have to do with taste. If they are hearing things, make sure that their hearing aids are working. Get their hearing checked. If there is something that they keep tasting, think about going to the dentist. Is there something going on with their teeth or with their gums? If you need to, I would suggest that you work with your doctor no matter what type of hallucinations are happening, just to find out, is this something that we should possibly be treating with medications, especially if the hallucinations are scary or troubling. We don't want to reality check or argue with a person who is seeing something. I was walking with a woman in a community who told me to keep picking up my feet so that I don't step on the little people. And I said, thank you for letting me know because I don't see them. And I think that that's fair to say, I don't see them, but I'm, especially something like the bunnies, right? I don't see them, but I'm happy that you do. They obviously they bring you a lot of joy. There was a couple I knew who he was aware of the fact that he had hallucinations and he couldn't tell whether they were real or not. He would see people And his wife suggested, if you see people, hold out your hand, and if they shake your hand, they're a real person, and if they don't, they're a hallucination. One of the things that we can do is we can invite people to tell us more about the hallucination. Get that cat out of here. I don't like that cat. And I look and I see that there is no cat. Well, first of all, is it a misperception or a hallucination? Is there a great big fluffy coat lying on the floor that they are seeing as a cat? In which case I'd move the jacket. Or if there's just nothing and they're seeing a cat, I can ask them to go more deeply into it. You know, I don't see the cat, but boy, I would love it if you would tell me more about it. Is it a fluffy cat? What color is the cat? Does it have a long tail or kind of a short tail? Going more deeply into the hallucination can actually help bring a person out of it. Executive dysfunction. Thanks for sticking with me, guys. I know we're covering a lot of stuff. Executive dysfunction. Well, if you think about executive function, that is the frontal lobes of the brain, right? That's where our executive functioning center is. It is the last part of our brain to have evolved as humans. And in utero, it's the last part of the brain to form. It's that piece that kind of folds over at the end. And it is that executive functioning piece that some people say gives us our humanity, the ability to have empathy, the ability to see things from another person's perspective, the ability to make a plan and follow through on that plan, the ability to solve problems. These are all of the things that go away with a person whose dementia causes executive dysfunction. So certainly frontotemporal dementia, the name implies the parts of the brain. It's the frontal lobes, which are this executive functioning piece, and the temporal lobes, which have to do with language. So frontotemporal dementia results in a person not really being able to see things from another person's perspective, making terrible decisions, having difficulty solving even what seem like fairly minimal problems. We need to plan ahead and be prepared for the unexpected and not shame people if they're having these issues. And the reason that I bring this up is it's because it's not just frontotemporal dementia where we might start seeing these kinds of symptoms. Because remember, neurons and neuronal pathways are dying, brain tissue is dying, the disease spreads. And so it may have started out as Alzheimer's disease in some very specific lobes, the hippocampus, and then it starts to spread to other portions of the brain. So a person might experience inhibition. Sexual inhibition is very common for people who are living with frontotemporal dementia. It certainly was in my household. An inability to stay focused. It seems like a wholesale personality change. So what do we do when we're with a person who is having those types of experiences? Number one, we have our mantra, they're doing the best they can. And this is true with all dementias. We have to remember that nobody is being willful. Nobody is trying to be difficult. Nobody is trying to make you crazy. They really are doing the best that they can to operate in a world that has gone upside down and sideways. When my husband was alive, I had a giant roll of paper, 3 feet wide. I spooled out a piece about 8 feet long. I hung it on a wall and I wrote in big letters, he's doing the best he can. And I would stand in front of that thing and cry because it was just like, okay, I'm the one who needs to change. I'm the one whose brain is capable of change. 3 big breaths, get my cortisol levels down. We need to have seemingly bottomless patience, but of course we don't, right? We lose it sometimes. So that also means patience with ourselves and with the fact that there are some times where we're just going to get it wrong. And that's okay too, because we're doing the best that we can. Pay attention to spending if you're living with a person who has this sort of executive dysfunction. Not only did we get just astonishing amounts of wine delivered on a regular basis, my husband played a game called Magic the Gathering, which is a card game, and I discovered that he was spending $400 a week on these cards. So I had to start really paying close attention to where our money was going. This was well before he was diagnosed. Lists may or may not help. So my husband was misdiagnosed with adult onset ADD. I thought that creating lists, sticky notes would help us. Didn't help at all because he was just not able to follow a list. Other people might be able to. He was not able to. What I would do is say things like, this is so hard and I hate it for you. I really hate for you that you are having this experience. I can tell this is very difficult, especially because he would get upset, as other people might as well, and start like, especially early on, when a person knows that they should be able to do this thing. I should be able to ride a bicycle. I should be able to make a sandwich, and they can't. And so we need to be able to just say, wow, this is so hard. I hate this for you. And big breath. This is a moment. This is going to pass. We need to be ready for the next thing. Retain a sense of humor. Kitty Norton has this amazing blog called Stumped Town Dementia that she did while her mother was living. The blog is still out there, and my God, she's just brilliant at helping us see that there are ways to deal with things that are way outside the tragedy narrative that I really appreciated. We always need to check our own emotional state, and remember, no scolding. If we yell at people, it's just not going to get us anywhere. We need to be able to say, I'm sorry, when we do go there, because you know what? We are going to go there sometimes. Procedural memory. So Dr. Alan Power is one of my dementia heroes. He has two books that I love, Dementia Beyond Drugs and Dementia Beyond Disease. They are both expensive and they're hard to find, but if you can find them in a library, I recommend them. He is the one who introduced me to the concept of cognitive ramps. So first of all, what is procedural memory? Procedural memory is the ability to follow a sequence of steps, right? We do it all the time. Anyway, I don't need to go into a lot of detail with that, but I'm going to share a story when my husband was making himself a ham and cheese sandwich. I watched him go to the refrigerator, get the ham, get the cheese, he got the mayonnaise, he went to where the bread box is, got the bread, he found a knife. He had all of these things on a counter, and then he started banging on the counter, pounding his chest and screaming because he could not remember the first step. How do I do this thing? What I don't want to do is just say, oh, for crying out loud, just let me do it for you, which is, of course, what I did that day. Instead, we want to think about this concept of cognitive ramps. So quick story, my mom is with Ken, my beloved stepdad, and Ken has a routine. And Ken's routine is that every day, Ken gets the paper, brings it inside, makes the coffee. While the coffee is percolating, because he wants to make sure that when my mom gets up, she has a fresh cup of coffee. He lets the coffee percolate. He grabs a cup of coffee. He goes into the living room where he sits in a chair, puts his feet up on the ottoman, turns on the TV, and while the morning news is playing, he is looking at his newspaper. That is Ken's routine. It is what makes Ken Ken. My mom calls me up and she says, oh, for crying out loud, today Ken put the cream right into the coffee maker. The whole thing, the quart of half and half. He poured it right into the coffee maker. It's ruined. That's it. He's done. No more making the coffee for Ken. And what I explained to my mom is how awful it feels to have a job taken away from you. How awful it feels to have your routine messed up. Think about when you step into the shower and there's no shampoo. Think how it happens when you go to brush your hair and somebody's moved your hairbrush. There are things that you're planning on doing, and when you cannot do them, it does not feel good. So what I said, based on what I had learned from Dr. Power, is, Mom, how do we set up cognitive ramps? Meaning, how do we give Ken some steps to follow that will ensure that he is successful to get done the job that he needs to do to maintain his routine? How could we have him be successful making coffee? And she thought about it and she said, well, I guess I could put a pitcher of water next to the coffee machine. Yeah, you could do that. Oh, I could put a label on it that says water. I like that. I like that. She said, maybe I could make a checklist. Pour the water in, put the coffee in. Yes, these are examples of cognitive ramps. I am setting somebody up for success. Teepa Snow talks about the importance of doing things with somebody and not for them. So this is an example that I am effectively doing it with him by creating those steps. I might coach him. I might stand by and say, that looks great. Let's go ahead and put the water in now. But Ken does it without her there, and we want him to continue doing it without her there for as long as possible. I mentioned Teepa Snow's hand under hand method. Look it up if it's not something you're familiar with, because it is a method that allows us to help someone brushing their hair instead of doing it for them, help somebody put their jacket on instead of doing it for them. The longer that a person stays involved in their own care, the better their quality of life, which reduces behaviors. I hate the word behaviors because it implies that there's some naughtiness involved, but it reduces the negative reactions to the world if a person feels like they are still a part of it and like they have some agency. Simplify solutions. This is all part of helping with cognitive ramps. So it starts off that I say, hey, you know what? We're going to be leaving in about 10 minutes. Why don't you go get dressed? Done. That evolves to, ooh, let's go upstairs and pick out the clothes and then put them on. And that maybe then evolves to me picking out the clothes for you. But there might be a middle step where I help you be successful because you walk to the closet and it's like, what do you put on? What do you put on? There are so many shirts. So maybe I just have 2 shirts in the closet. Maybe I just have 2 pairs of socks in the drawer so that you are more likely to be successful doing it yourself. Moving on, visual changes that take place during dementia, depth perception can be hammered, which can result in a person being more likely to fall and dropping things because they don't see that they're not actually above the table when they go to set down the glass. Same color objects can get lost. My husband goes upstairs into the white bathroom where there are white walls, a white floor, a white toilet. And as I hear him shut the bathroom doors, I'm running up to say, no, and then I get there in time to hear him peeing on the wall because the toilet has disappeared. It's the same color as everything else. Families will do things like put tape on, get a different color toilet seat, put tape on the edge of the bathtub. Peripheral vision is also reduced. And so it can be, especially as later stages develop, so that a person's view of the world is sort of like a beach ball being in front of them. They don't really see things that are coming from the outside. So again, I encourage you to look up a little bit of Teepa Snow stuff. She has something called the positive physical approach that talks about the fact that since people have limited peripheral vision, I want to make sure that I always approach from the front and not from the side. I want to make sure that when I approach, I get to eye level and I say, hi, I have a name tag, if that's helpful, Allison. Great to see you, Mom. They might have greater sensitivity to light and glare, and that processing speed issue can cause things to seem blurred and confused. Eating. There are people, if you put a white plate on a white tablecloth, the plate is likely to disappear. So I've seen cases where somebody is eating food off of everybody else's plate, and it's because they don't see their plate. Sometimes we need to push their plate further out into the table because of that peripheral vision. They can only see something that's out a few feet in front of them. This is the last informational slide. So communicating with compassion. We want to avoid open-ended questions. So saying like, what would you like for lunch today? That's a lot. My gosh, there are so many things that could be lunch. That can cause a person who's living with dementia to get really overwhelmed. Instead, I can say, would you like a ham sandwich or a tuna sandwich? If I can add visuals, great. I can hold out the ham, I can hold out the can of tuna. Which would you like? This idea of offering choices helps a person hang on to their autonomy. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but if I were to say to somebody, do you want the blue towel or the green towel? I want the green towel. Well, my gosh, they have just made a choice. They are a partner in their care. As already stated, we want to avoid logic and reasoning. You're going to need your coat because it's cold outside. Look out the window. Everybody else is wearing a coat. You're going to need a coat. You're not going to be able to reason with a person who is not capable of reasoning. So therefore, what we want to do instead is go outside. Just bring a coat with you so that if they get cold, you can hand it to them. We want to respect apathy, no nagging. But the doctor said he's supposed to be working 150 minutes a week and he's not walking 150 minutes a week. He's just sitting in that chair. Well, you know what? If we get into a fight with him, that's not going to get us anywhere. We want to use visual cues as much as possible, which we've already talked about. We want to focus on what people can still do. And if somebody does start to get upset, get curious. What happened? 70% of the time, it's something in the environment. It's too cold, it's too hot, it's too noisy. That doesn't taste good. This label on my pants is bothering me. We want to really think about what is it that caused the response that we're seeing, and so that we can potentially avoid it next time. And finally, please take care of you. We all know the statistics, right? We who are dementia family caregivers are more likely to get dementia ourselves. How unfair is that? But it's a fact because of the stress that we live in. But we can reduce that. We can try our best to live a lifestyle that reduces dementia risk. And so that means that we need to get exercise. That's probably the number one. And which exercise is the best, right? What exercise? Dr. Chris Rhodes was at the same conference I was at last week, and he was asked that question. And he said, the best exercise is the one you will actually do. So if it's walking, go walking. Yeah, but I can't go walking because what do I do with him? This is where we need to start asking ourselves hard questions. If I can't take care of myself, what do I need to do? Do I need to get help? Is it time for my loved one to maybe start spending time in a day program? We need to get support so that we're able to take care of ourselves. Kitty Norton, who I mentioned earlier with the Stumptown Dementia, also has her beautiful movie, Wine, Women, and Dementia. And I remember the one thing that I found so compelling about it was when she talks about her dad taking care of her mom. He was committed that he was going to take care of her mom because he was that kind of guy. And he was going to do it himself because he was that kind of guy. And she said, but it turns out he was also the kind of guy who gets pancreatic cancer. He just wasn't taking care of it. I'm not saying that that was why he got pancreatic cancer, but it was quite advanced because he just didn't go to the doctor. He stopped taking care of himself. We need to take care of ourselves. Don't be the frog in the water. So it doesn't feel like I'm really caregiving. I mean, all I do is I say, hey, honey, go upstairs and get dressed. I mean, that's no skin off my back, right? That's easy. But then suddenly it's not just saying, hey, honey, why don't you go get dressed? Suddenly, or not suddenly, slowly, it evolves that now I'm actually going upstairs with him to help him get dressed. Now I'm actually thinning out the closets. Now I'm actually putting his coat on him and putting his pants on him. Somewhere along the line, caregiving got a lot harder. And we need to pay attention to that and to what it's doing to ourselves, both physically and mentally and emotionally. So that is it. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share and say thank you all of you for sitting through that. I know that was long. I'm not in any rush. I am here to hang out. If people want to ask questions, we can poke around in the chat and see if there are things there. For those of you who need to run, by all means, go ahead and take off. But know that I'm so glad that you were able to be with us today. And feel free to
Matter
speak.
dementia.
Sorry?
What is white matter dementia?
What is white matter dementia? You know, I'm not going to give you the right answer to that because I don't know technically what's happening with white matter dementia, and I don't want to pretend that I do. Is there somebody, hi Paul, is there somebody who feels more qualified to answer that than I? Then I'll tell you what I'm going to do is check with my experts, and I will make sure that I answer that question when I send out my email. Because I know it and I hear about it, but I've never really thought about like, how is that different than some of the others? So thank you for that question.
Allison, it is based on an area of the brain that had a lack of blood flow.
Okay.
Deeper than that. So my brain immediately kind of thinks vascular type of situation. But yeah, I think it's good to get more information on it.
I do too. Thank you,
Yeah.
Annie. Any other questions?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Hi, this is my first time here. Thank you. You're incredible. The
Oh.
information here and the way you deliver it exceeds anything I've heard before. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for being here.
I'm having trouble getting my mom to shower.
Yeah.
I feel so silly saying this out loud. She used to shower every single day, and now it's such a fight. Is there any suggestions that anyone has? Are there anything?
Well, first, let me open that up to the group. Is there anybody who has loved ones who do not like to shower? I see lots of heads now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And does anybody care to share what they do about that?
Yeah, I can, my situation's evolved where it was a fight, and now the things I've done that make it much, much easier is to, first of all, find the time of day and circumstances that make it easier to do it, because there are big differences. And the other is to not make that the focus. Like we're getting up, we're going somewhere. Oh, but let's do the shower first. And now she's up, we're walking a little bit to maybe get dressed. Say, let's go in here and just take the shower. It's almost like it's not that she doesn't want the shower. It's being overwhelmed by what it means to do that and all the steps. Because when she's in the shower, she loves it.
Right.
And I saw another hand go up with, yeah, Cheryl.
Yeah, I think it's all the steps. It just becomes a nuisance to them. So if you can put it in that perspective and make it as easy as possible. One thing that helped me was the respite care worker brought these really large scented, they're not really towels. They're not as big as a towel, but they're bigger than a washcloth. And you can do a body in 4 minutes and make it fun. Make it, this was my husband who's passed, but with him, we made it sensual. And I also used a lot of essential oils, which, if they didn't want to shower and get water on them or get wet, you just want them to smell better, right? So the oils would help. But I eventually gave up on showering because we had the bathtub that he had to step over, and it was just, he had Parkinson's. It was just too difficult. So be realistic about what you can do. Work within that.
Steve, do you want to add something to that? And Cheryl, thank you for that.
The temperature only has to be wrong one time.
Mhm.
And if it's too cold or too hot, that's what's going to stick with them going forward. You have to make sure before you ever try to get them into the shower, into the bath, that the temperature is exactly the way they like it.
And I always would start that on the feet just to see if it was the right temperature before I just drenched him in the entire shower. So starting small, working your way up their legs, always asking if it's the right temperature. It does make a huge difference. But it was also a routine when he was still home with me. It was after dinner, we'd watch a little TV. We'd start talking about a shower and pajamas and brushing our teeth a little bit early so it didn't come as a surprise.
I love that, Tammy.
Thank you.
And thank you, Stephen. I'm going to add just a couple of things there. Shameless plug for Zinnia TV, right? We do have our activity of daily living videos. And so one of those, we have several of them are about showering. Oops. Several of them are about showering and the idea being, so remember I talked about visual verbal touch, that we want to show somebody something before we do it. And so the idea with our showering videos is let's watch it. Let's look at all these people. Oh my gosh, that looks so good. It's so warm. There are people getting washed. There are dogs getting washed, babies getting washed. So it kind of sets the tone that this is the thing we're going to do. Teepa Snow says that if you are not sweating, the bathroom is too cold.
Right.
So you want to make sure that the bathroom itself is very warm. And I agree completely with checking that water temperature. Some people use different language, like, oh my gosh, spa time. And maybe we start off by doing something with our nails and then we shift into the shower. I think it's important to get curious. Why don't they want to shower? I know that for my mom, who smells like yogurt, by the way, because she's like, she does not want to shower and she doesn't have dementia. She's afraid of falling, terrified of falling. And so therefore, is it a perceived safety issue? Is it because they don't want to get wet? Is it because they don't like the time? Is it too much fuss and bother? My mom now uses those wipes. And you know what? She smells like a nice flavored yogurt anyway, instead of plain yogurt. So using those wipes instead is not a terrible idea. We, especially in American culture, have this concept that we need to shower every day. It's not true. So as long as we are getting their private parts washed, getting their armpits washed, getting food washed off of them. I am a huge fan of an aftermarket bidet so that we can kind of help get the private parts washed. Yeah, so thank you, everybody. Abigail, I hope that helps.
Thank you. What did you say at the end? You're a huge fan of what kind of bidet?
Oh, an aftermarket. So
Okay, like a
actually,
cheaper one.
I splurged, man. I bought one of those Japanese toilets because I just love that thing. But the
Thank you.
aftermarket ones, my son has one, plugged it in, works like a charm.
Okay, thank you.
And let's see, other questions. I'm looking through the chat, but if anybody has anything they want to pop out with, please by all means do. Yep, tubs can be modified with a tub cut to make the shower accessible. Absolutely. Yep, a fixed shower head can feel like pins and needles. Yeah, thank you guys for offering things up. Ginger Opdyke, thanks for being here today. Feel the water with hands first. Yes, absolutely. Oh, a snack beforehand. Right, let's set the tone. Oh, and Costco apparently has a nice bidet. Any other questions that people would like to ask? I'm so impressed with the ability of this group to share and to talk about what's working for you, because every single person in this room is an expert in the person that they care for. And there's crossover. The things that work for you will work well for other people. So this is how we learn. I'm just looking at the chat. I don't see.
I'll ask another question since I'm
Yes,
new
please.
to this group, if that's okay. I have 3 kids. My mom lives with us and she has Alzheimer's, and my 3 kids, my 2 younger girls still interact with her, but my 15-year-old son is like out. He's like not interested at all. Does anyone have any advice on anything? Like he's just like, this is worse than death. Like I can't be with her. She has no patience for me, that kind of thing. Does anyone have advice on like how to engage a 15-year-old boy who is a 15-year-old teenage boy?
I'm just going to pop right in there. So my kids were 12 and 15 when my husband was diagnosed. So I really struggled with the fact that my younger one wanted nothing to do with his father. And my only choice was to allow him to have nothing to do with his father, because I tried to push it sometimes and then he would go dark. And I knew that my husband, if he were the one calling the shots, he'd be like, he would say, take care of the kids, take care of the kids. And so we need to really respect where your son is coming from. I highly encourage you to check out Lorenzo's house. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Lorenzo's House. It's a
Okay.
group out of Chicago. And the woman who started that program was a woman like me. She had young kids when her husband got dementia, and she recognized that there are just no resources for kids to be able to get support from each other and to understand what's going on and how do I be with a person who has dementia. There are workshops, there are seminars, there are summer camps, there are support groups. I would absolutely suggest that you go to their website and check that out.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's hard. Steve? Oh, you're just giving a thumbs up. Okay, cool. Yeah, Cheryl says, yeah.
I had a bit of an insight with that, and I'm glad you mentioned support groups, because I worked with developmentally delayed children for a long time, and because they had so much special need, just like people with dementia, all of the attention, or the vast majority of the attention in the household, was going towards the loved one that needed all this extra care.
Yeah.
And the children who were whole got ignored. So I created a special group just for the children of siblings with developmental needs. And I think if you could get your sons into some kind of a group, or even if you know someone who's a specialist in that, encourage them to get a group started, because they are non-existent and you really have to put your heads together to make it happen. So important.
Oh, Cheryl, yay you for seeing that need and doing something about it, because those kids are forgotten. And then that creates resentment towards the kid who is struggling. And yeah, all of those
It
things.
pushes them further away from the loved one.
Exactly. Yeah. Anything else that we can talk about
Okay,
here?
I'll ask one more, not to be annoying.
Abigail, no, you're the best. Keep them coming, baby. Keep
Oh,
'em
I have so
coming.
many questions. Okay, so I'm very new to this. I'm not even sure how I got in this group. I'm very thankful to be here. Can you just tell me, you said you have a support group. Is that something different than this?
Yes. And that is something that is not fitting for everybody here. That my support group is just a bunch of ladies who I've been with now for
Okay, got it.
8 years, and most of their loved ones have passed away or are very far in their disease trajectory. But you have to find a support group. So where do you go to find a support group? Well, if I'm going to send you my deck, and that has that one page that has resources. So I highly recommend that you check out Natalie Edmonds, who has Dementia Care Blazers. So she has support groups available through there, and lots of videos. The Alzheimer's Association, the Alzheimer's Foundation, Dementia, Dementia, Bill, what is it? Kevin's group, Dementia something of America, Dementia Services of America.
Society, DSA.
Society, thank you. I knew it was an S. Dementia Society of America. These are all organizations that host support groups. I found mine through the Alzheimer's Association. Also, if there are specific disease modalities that you want to be with people who understand what that is, the Association for Frontotemporal Dementia, the Lewy Body Association, these all have support groups that are specifically for that scenario. Lorenzo's house also has support groups for you, and those are free. So I would Lorenzo's house might be one-stop shopping for you guys.
Okay, thank you. And how often does this group, do you hold these groups?
We meet once a month, and I have your email now, so I'll send you an invitation. Once a month, it's just this. It's just me talking about something, and it's really meant to be a support group. The other once a month, we also have this other session where somebody joins me, and we talk about a topic that they're an expert in that I may not know much about. Yes, Arnie. Hi, Arnie. So good to see you.
Good to see you too. Just make a point about support groups. I've come to start saying that the most important person on your team or people on your team are other people that have gone through this. Unquestionably, and I think you mentioned it, that, we are the experts because we've been through this, and especially finding somebody who's where you are or potentially a little bit further along. But I resisted going to support groups for a while because I figured I could handle it. And when I finally did, it was the first of many. I should have done it sooner.
Yeah.
So I just kind of, and if the first one you try doesn't feel right, and I mean, I'm in a men's support group. I went to some co-ed support groups. The men's support group just hit me right. It's not that they're bad, that some of them are bad. They just may not be the right for you and your personality and your situation. So if you try one and it doesn't work, don't get turned off to support groups. Just keep going until you find the one that fits.
I love that you added that piece. I found the same thing. I went to a support group that just always, at the end, I would cry and feel horrible about myself. And then I found another one that was like, it was my people. It was all people who they were more in your situation, Abigail. It was all people who were supporting younger people who were supporting somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you betcha.
Is there anyone here in Los Angeles who can recommend a good group?
I would.
Alzheimer's Association.
What was that?
Oh, I said the Alzheimer's Association. I live in New York, Abigail, and my mom passed away a few years ago. But and it was pre-COVID. I mean, she lived past COVID, but so you used to go in person, but then they changed formats because so many people with COVID weren't going out. So no matter where you were, you can make it work. They'll have it in the evenings. What I found, and my husband is a therapist. He's actually retired now, but with the VA, and he is the most supportive, understanding man. He was wonderful with my mother.
Yeah.
And there's an end, is that when I was in a support group, since you're going through it, no one can understand what we're going through. As much as he loved my mother, it wasn't his mother.
Yeah.
So no one can understand what we're going through. Like we understand it. So you definitely join one. I'm sure it'll work into your schedule because she's also said you have kids.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can also suggest Alzheimer's Los Angeles, which is different than the Alzheimer's Association. I'm in San Diego, and Alzheimer's San Diego, Alzheimer's Orange County, and Alzheimer's Los Angeles broke away from the National Association about 10 years ago, because as great as the Alzheimer's Association is, they have some national interests as well. those groups are very local and stay local. So I just, this past weekend, actually met the folks from Alzheimer's Los Angeles, and they've got a lot of programs. And I think that you might want to give them a try because they're definitely focused locally.
3 cheers for that, Arnie. I love that group. I support that. And Cheryl, I see that you have your hand up.
Yeah, someone asked about Los Angeles. There's something called the Village in many, many cities. The Village Pasadena, for example, the Village Boston. And I think there are probably 6 or 7 of these in the LA area now. I know for a fact there is in Pasadena. They offer groups on all kinds of subjects. So for those who are seeking just a light social group without it being too medically derived, that may be a good option, especially if your loved one is just starting this process and maybe doesn't want to go to a doctor and maybe doesn't want to get diagnosed and is fighting that. I think the Village provides so many groups. Pasadena has 70 a month, and they might not all be appropriate, but even a simple talk group would be helpful. And the other thing I wanted to mention is about the caretakers need to get respite care so they get out of the house and away from the issues. Even if it's 8 hours a week, it is so helpful for just keeping your balance and your mind together.
Yes. Cheers. Here, here. Yeah, Barbara.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention the National Council of Dementia Minds. And this organization would be if your person is in a situation and they need to have a support group. And it is founded and run by people living with dementia. And it can help them have their special time. And they, like you, really are helped by being able to talk to people because they're the ones who know that what they're going through that you don't understand as their care partner. So they do have groups for the people living with dementia. So I think it's dementiaminds.org.
Okay, thank you.
And I do another like, yes, 2 thumbs up. I love that group. And the conference that I was talking about earlier, the Michigan Assisted Living Association and the panel of people with dementia, those are all people with National Council for Dementia Minds. And they
Yeah, I recognize the story. I recognize the comment about the eating and
yes,
what you can have on our plate. Yes.
yeah,
and so many others.
it was amazing. It was amazing. Yeah. Any other questions? I think we'll take just one more if there's anything else. Otherwise, we'll give you back your day. All right. Wow. Thank you so much for being here today, everybody. What a pleasure. And thank you again for being so generous with each other. Please be as generous with yourselves. Okay. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.